Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jermel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jermel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jermel President and on Twitter at President Jermel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month. Hey, what's up, guys? Coming up next, we got Coach Cyrus Alexander, who was a great part of basketball history in the state of South Carolina, who really did it at top-notch level. We joked in our conversation because he actually didn't recruit me, and I wanted to play for South Carolina State. But we had great conversation just about what he get out of different schools, I went to Howard, South Carolina State, Tennessee State, and North Carolina A&T. But there's communities in those areas that he learned something from the community, the players, and the assistant coaches that work for him. So very interesting conversation that we had about life in general, in coaching, and how you're always being watched and keep your best foot always forward. So great conversation with Coach Cy. Let's get into the interview. Hey, but I know you're busy, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I appreciate you coming on.
Man, I appreciate what you're doing, man. I've been reading a little bit about it, and, the fact that you're taking something and trying to make something positive within the community, it's always good, man. More people should do what you're doing, and anything I can do to help you moving forward, let me know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, we take this opportunity on this platform to try to educate student athletes, the potential student athletes coming up. We feel like it's a lot of, information that's just not out there that parents can get on how to get to the next level from middle school, high school, college, and even after college. So we talk to coaches, business owners, agents, nutritionists, the whole nine, anything that surrounds a student athlete. We try to get a little piece of that to give the audience what they need so they can move forward.
Right. Now, when is this? When do you air your podcast?
We do it every other week.
Every other week.
Yeah. So I think yours is probably going to be about another about 3-4 weeks.
Okay. Well, just let me know so I can send me a copy of it or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. You get a copy. You get an email and a copy of everything. Even when you send your information to Ashley or your social media and all that stuff, we'll make sure we push it the week before it comes out.
Okay. Good stuff. I have not had. I listened to Ben. I have not had a chance to listen to JB yet, and I saw where the coach from Clemson. I think you having the baseball coach from Clemson on, what have you.
Yeah. So we'll get right into it, Coach. What we try to do is break down that really, the beginning of where it all started, because talking to the Rick Barrys and all those guys that the elder guys, is things change from rec departments and how people came up and all that. So we like to have, because even though it's changes, the stories are still the same. The approach is still the same when it comes to high school and college and competing, the whole nine. So take us back to Park and Rival days, where you're from, your state, city, and tell us about that time when the young Cyrus is starting to come out.
Well, Jermel, I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the son of two educators. Both my mom and my dad taught school. My mom was a first grade teacher, and my father was a middle school teacher and loved sports. So that's where I got my love of sports from. And they were both obviously very interested in my getting an education. So education was primary in my house. So I started playing sports in elementary school and played through junior high school and played through high school and played through college, and was played at Parkland High School, won two conference championships. Got to the state tournament my junior year, lost in the semifinals. In fact, we were scheduled to play John Lucas, who was from Durham,
wow.
this side, and we didn't meet Luke and them because we lost.
Right.
Then went on to play 4 years of Division II basketball at Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Hold on, coach. Before you get into that, I want the timeline of the middle school. Like, did you play rec ball?
Yeah. Okay.
Because we always talk about that support system. I know your dad was. We got some kids. I mean, some clients, some guests that didn't have a father figure.
Right.
Didn't have that support system. So talk
Right.
about that times where that 5th through 7th grade, we started playing in the rec departments, and how were the programs, and were they effective enough to keep your interest through high school?
Yeah, well, I played I played elementary, and we had a recreation center called Skyland, and I would go down there pretty much every weekend. Sometimes during the week, I had to get my homework done first,
sure.
and had to be back home before dark. So
For sure.
and that's the way it was. And growing up in my neighborhood, it was, you talk about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, all the parents in the neighborhood knew all the kids in the neighborhood,
Sure.
and they, if they saw you out, then they got you in. And all my neighbors, I grew up in a neighborhood where it was a lot of boys. It's unbelievable. On my street, I grew up on a street called Rich Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and on my street, we had one guy made professional football named Ike Hill, played for the Chicago Bears. We had several college coaches. Steve Joyner, the current head coach at Johnson C. Smith,
Wow.
grew up on my street. Buck Joyner, the current head coach at Hampton University, grew up on my street. So it was an athletic street, and we all helped each other. So those guys were a big part of my growing up. My high school teammates, who were my elementary school teammates, and I went to the same elementary school that my father taught at.
Wow.
So that means anything I did was scrutinized at a high level,
right.
Because all they had to do was send a note around the corner to the other classroom that your son's not taking care of his business. So
right.
I was very much disciplined by a community and by coaches.
For sure.
I grew up around my junior high school coaches. I played all sports in junior high school. Played football, played basketball, played baseball. My daddy was actually the baseball coach, so I played for him. And so I realized early on, Jermel, that athletics was a big part of who I became, and it helped form my competitive nature. And it also helped form my discipline, because I knew to get to B, I had to do A being my academics. If I wanted to play, then I had to have good grades.
For
so
sure.
As you just mentioned, the 1 through 7 was my formative years in growing up, understanding the magnitude of how important being disciplined was, how important academics was, how important it was to compete. And I got the academic part from my mother.
Right.
She was a first grade school teacher. I got the competitive nature and the discipline from my father. And so it was a good combination. And I understood. My daddy was a season ticket holder for Winston-Salem State University back when Big House Gaines was the coach.
Yeah.
I got firsthand experience to see some of the best HBCU basketball players ever to play the game.
Wow.
Cleo Hill was one of the best players out of New Jersey. He talked about Earl Monroe, and Earl was great. But Cleo Hill, if you go back and do research, Cleo Hill was one of the top HBCU players. He and Al Adams, and I was very blessed when I coached the A&T to get to know Mr. Adams because I watched him as a child in junior high school. I was a witness. I went to almost the year Winston-Salem State University. They was Winston-Salem State College then. Was the first Black institution to win the national championship at the Division II level. Wow. 1967. I was in the 7th grade. Earl Monroe averaged 40 points a game.
40?
Average, you know what I'm saying? Average 40 points a game. So I was able to see that, and then I got a chance in high school. We had a great team. Had 5 teammates who are still very close to me now. We played against the guys at Winston-Salem State. Got to know a lot of the players at Wake Forest. Charlie Davis and Gil McGregor, who's one of my dear friends now. Dickie Walker. So I was fortunate. I didn't athletics and competing in sports kept me out of gangs in the street and all that kind of stuff. So I tell young people when I get the opportunity to speak to them, which I did a lot during my career and still do now, it was the foundation of what helped me become who I am today. It gave me the discipline to understand that hard. I have a quote, and you might want to use this. I got it from Barack Obama, and it simply says, "Hard things are hard." Isn't that powerful?
Period.
Hard things are hard. Barack used to say, if something got to his desk, he knew it wasn't going to be easy. Hard things are hard. So my point is, if you want to accomplish something, it's going to be hard. Right. And it's going to take a certain amount of hard work. It's going to take a certain amount of hard discipline, a certain amount of hard focus, laser focus. I mean, nothing is going, for the most part, especially when you're an African-American male, it is going to, you got to go above and beyond the call of duty.
For sure.
And I've been preaching this and preaching it, and till the day I die, I'm gonna keep preaching it to anybody that's willing to listen. Because again, you know, we have to work through a whole lot more obstacles than our counterparts for the most part. And it's not I ain't no racist, I ain't anything. I'm just telling the truth. For sure. And that's kind of what my legacy is. That I wrote a book about 3 years ago called Beyond the Backboard, my unique HBCU experience in the shadows of big time college basketball. And it chronicles my entire career and the opportunities to compete against the John Cressons and the Jermel Prestons of the world. And we won some, we lost some. Right. But through it all, we tried to do things the right way. We faced, we faced the obstacles and pretty much came out with a fairly decent career, what have you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got a question for you. You know, back in the days, they didn't really have, I don't know for sure, but were they like travel ball, AAU basketball back in that day? So if that wasn't the case, how in high school, how did you make your college decision? Because when you're talking to other guests, I'm talking to other guests, they always talked about there was someone they knew at a college or someone that kind of recommended them. So because it wasn't that stage for kids to kind of expose themselves. So what was your journey of getting to your to a 4-year institution to compete?
Yeah, well, the guy I was just talking to you about that made the NFL from my street, his name was Ike Hill. He was the first black the first black football player to attend Catawba College, which was about an hour from Winston-Salem. Yeah, no. Ike lived about 2 houses down from me. He went to Catawba, and it was a bold move on his part. And Ike was about 7 years older than me, but I always looked up to him because he was a champion in the football. He was a quarterback, he was a point guard, he was a baseball player. He could do it all and was very excelled at all of it. And so he was the influencer in my decision to attend Catawba. And then one of the guys that I played against at North Forsyth, I went to Parkland. One of the guys I played against at North Forsyth was named Floyd Perry, and he was a big-time all-conference player here in Winston-Salem, and he was there also. So I had a homeboy who was already there. He was a junior when I was coming in as a freshman. So he was a big part of that, helping me in that process. What we had, Jermel, in those days, we didn't have travel ball. We just had summer leagues. We had recreational summer leagues where we played, twice a week. Probably played on Wednesdays. Probably played on Saturdays. And the games were either at the campus of Winston-Salem State or at Wake Forest. And it was just the best players in basically the three cities they call it the Triad area: Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point. And then Bob McAdoo, who played in the NBA and played at Carolina. When Bob came back in the summertime, he had the Bob McAdoo Summer League. And it was one of the first high-level, big-time summer leagues where you had some of your young stars in the NBA, because Bob was in the NBA, would come and play, and he had your pro level, and then you had your high school level. Yes. And I played in the high school level, and guys, after our games were finished, we get a chance to see people like Dr. J.
Wow. Would
come down and play in the league. Dr. J met his first wife, Turquoise Brown, who's from Winston-Salem. Wow. By coming to Winston-Salem to play in the summer league. So it was when McAdoo came down, he got the sponsors, and it was a big time summer league. They played games in Winston-Salem, they played games in Greensboro. So that was the closest thing that we had towards travel ball, but it was mostly summer leagues. And then it was just a lot of get down on the park, get to the park on Saturday afternoon, and play and hoop. And if you lost, you didn't get back up.
Yeah, that's right. You didn't get back on.
So you wanted to keep winning.
Yes,
so
sir.
you had to wait an hour before you played again.
Yes,
that
sir.
kind of thing. So it was just playground park basketball, man. And I've heard a lot about, I've never been able to attend, but when I was growing up, the Rucker League in New York was everything that folks talked about. They're playing in the Rucker, But
for sure.
So park basketball, playground basketball was where I honed my skills and just competing against the best that we had in the Triad area.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm excited to announce the collaboration with NCAA Eligibility Center. Moving forward, we'll be doing a series of podcasts that talks about how to be a student athlete, the transition from student athlete to different careers, and also a lot of eligibility rules and regulations when it comes to travel ball. These things we've been talking about for years now, and we're happy to collab with the NCAA Eligibility Center to bring nationwide information to our audience. Again, we're excited about this opportunity, and we look forward to bringing this information to you guys. Stay tuned, stay engaged, and thanks for following. Now let's get back to the interview. While we at Catawba, Coach, did you have plans of playing in the NBA at the next level?
Well, I never thought what I could do. Maybe that's why I became a fairly decent coach. I always knew the game. I knew the game from an intellectual standpoint. I knew how. I was never a big time athlete. I could do two things. Well, I could do three things. One, I played extremely hard, extremely. Two, I understood the game. And three, I could shoot. Right. I knew how. I could flat out shoot, and that's what I look for sometimes when I'm watching a player is trying to recruit. I want a guy that's going to play extremely hard, a guy that understands the game, and you got to be able to shoot.
Well, Coach, I had all three of those things.
I know, man. I told you I messed up. You know, I messed up because when you was knocking them shots down and winking at me and smiling, I said, "Yeah, I screwed that one up."
So, Coach, okay, so you played at Catawba 4 years, and then after your senior year, did you go right into coaching? How did that happen?
What happened was, it's a funny story, and it's a true story. It's in my book. I wanted to continue playing, but that didn't happen. So I said I wanted to stay around the game. Well, I was a fairly good student in college. So my father, by the way, died suddenly my sophomore year. I was 18 years old. He was 55. And he had a brain tumor. And he probably, in this day and age, he probably could have lived, but back in 1973, I guess it just didn't happen. You know, so I decided to go to law school, to apply for law school. And I got accepted at several, one being Howard University, okay? So I had been accepted into Howard, and it was costing some money. So I said, well, let me see if I can get a grad assistantship of some type. So I should have framed this letter. I wrote a letter. I didn't know him from Adam. I wrote a letter to A.B. Williamson, who had just gotten a job at Howard. He had been at Howard 1 year. He was going into his second year at Howard when I wrote him, and I gave my background and gave my references. And it was a Friday afternoon. I'll never forget. It was a Friday afternoon. I was sitting home. I got a phone call because you didn't have cell phones and a caller IDs and all that kind of stuff. So you had to answer your phone. You couldn't skip the call if somebody want an ex-girlfriend you want to talk to. You had to answer the phone. So I answered the phone, and lo and behold, it was Coach Williamson. And he said, "Look, man, I got your letter. I've done a little research on you. You know, you seem like you come from good stock. I'd like you to come to DC, and I'd just like to sit down and talk to you. And I may be able to work out a graduate assistantship for you that could help you while you're going to school." This was like in June. The next week, Jermel, I drove to Washington, had a meeting with Coach Williamson, and accepted his graduate assistantship at Howard. Okay, so now I'm off to Washington in August to Howard as a law student and as a graduate assistant for the men's basketball program. Okay, now I'm in school 2 weeks, and I realized, man, this law school is gonna be pretty tough. I don't know if I'm gonna have time, how much time I'm gonna have to be messing with basketball, but I still have basketball in my heart. So probably first week in September, AB calls me in, and the guy his name was Oscar Pendleton, the guy that was the full-time assistant coach, had decided he'd walk away from coaching. And I see why he wanted to walk away. When AB told me, he said, "Look, man, I'd like to offer you this position, because I've been in DC about 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most." And he says, "I'd like to offer you this position." And I said, "Okay, what's it pay?" He said, $7,500. I said, "What?" I said, "I see why Oscar quit." So lo and behold, I pondered over it, talked to my fiance, talked to my mother. My mother was kind of like, because my mother was all about academics.
Right.
But I dropped out of law school and at 22, accepted a full-time job at Howard University and accepted a full-time job at Howard University at 22 years old, dropped out of law school. So then what happened was, now this is the kicker. AB's first year, his record at Howard was 9-19, his first year. Okay, so now we're going into my first year and his second year. We take the very same team that was 9-19, and we go 19-9 in his second year and my first year. So I don't know how much I had to do with that, but I do know that the athletic director gave me, this is true story, Jermel, gave me a $10,000 raise.
Wow.
So I went from making, check this out, man. I went from making, this is 1986, 87, somewhere around there. Excuse me, 1976, 77. I go from making $7,500 to $17,500. And I went out and bought a BMW, man.
What?
I bought a BMW, man. You couldn't tell me I went in high cotton. So, and that's basically, Jermel, how I got involved and see how the name, you know, I don't know, pretty much everybody calls me Coach Cy, right? And the way that started, when I was an assistant at 22, I had guys on my team that I was coaching that were older than me, some seniors like was 23. Right. And they wanted to call me Cy. And that's cool in the pros, when I'm trying to establish myself as a college basketball coach, and you got guys who just as old as you, or just as old as you are, maybe older. So I said, look, guys, let's do this. Let's compromise this thing. Y'all can call me Cy, but why don't you call me Coach Cy?
Right.
And that's how Coach Cy started. It was just a thing of I wanted my players to feel good, and I've been touted as a player's coach.
I heard that.
Communicates with guys. I'm hard, but I'm fair, and I can communicate. One of my biggest attributes is my ability to communicate and try to meet people halfway. You know, and
I'm gonna help you out with coaching. Before we go into the interview, I'm gonna help you out on the reason why I didn't go to state, and you probably would agree with this. And because of your decision, he was a great player, and it was a topsy-turvy. The same thing happened with Clemson when Terrell McIntyre picked Terrell Tech over me. So I think we was running the same era. Well, he was a senior and I was a junior. So you really didn't need another point guard the same size. And Mumu did a great job at South Carolina State.
He did.
And he always talked about, even Jamal Washington talked about how, you know, a player coach you were, how you made everything easy. Because when players mess up, first thing to do is look at the coach. They feel like they didn't have to do that because you communicated that with them all the time.
Well, just like I heard Coach Betts' podcast, and you asked Ben, what did he get from the various coaches? And I heard him say, well, the thing that I got most from Coach Cy was his ability to communicate with our players. I learned how important that was to making sure that you and your players are always on the same line. And I valued that, as far as I thought it was very, very important for me to know what makes Jermel tick. I thought that's the most, because see, everybody's an individual and everybody has their own quirks and this and that. And so it's important as a coach to be able to communicate. And I learned this through my parents, so forth and so. I need to know what buttons I can push to coach Jermel. If I need to be a crazy man to get you to do what you need to be done, then I can be that. But if I can just be calm and be Phil Jackson, and you can get it, you understand it, then I can. But the only way that I can know that is through communication. And when I have meetings with guys, I let them do 95% of the talking. I just write stuff down. And then if you don't do something, I'll pull out my legal pad and say, on such and such and such a date, Jermel, you said you wanted to do this. I didn't say it. You said it. So if that's what you said, and I take that to be the gospel, then that's what I expect from you. So that's kind of how, you know, I got that label of being able to communicate and be a player's coach. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing what I could to get the best out of you. And the only way I could know that is for you to tell me.
And that makes players feel comfortable that their coach has that personal touch with them, because we as
There you
players, we recognize that.
Right.
We
Right.
recognize that. So yeah, we get a little frustrated, we didn't get a shot or miss a shot. In back of our mind, we know our coach trusts us and he communicates, and I can talk to him about certain situations, what makes it a whole lot better.
I'll tell you a quick story. We're playing a championship game. We're down 6-7 points, and it's about 4 minutes to go. And everybody was expecting me to put some X's and O's and some sophisticated play. I just looked at Blakely. I looked at Boomer. I said, man, how about you getting the ball, getting everybody out of the way, and let's go win the daggone game. Guys, set a screen and get out of the way, space up. And that's what we did. He goes about 4 out of 5 in the next 4 minutes. We win the game. So a lot of times people make things a little bit more complicated than they really need to be.
I agree. So, Coach, you got Howard, South Carolina State, Tennessee State, North Carolina A&T. Those are the 4 colleges you coached at.
Yes.
Give me something you learned, not from the school, but the communities in those schools. What you learned from each of those communities? Obviously, it's different in different states, different communities.
Yes.
Tell me something that you learned from the community in Howard.
Well, at Howard, I was so young. I was at Howard from age 22 to age 3. And I learned more about the inner city, and you read about stuff and how hard it is for folks and Black Americans in particular. In Washington, I lived it. I could see it because I recruited guys who came up in Southeast. I mean, I recruited some guys who, when you go visit them and you coming out of their projects at night, you got to be careful to get back to your car, that kind of thing. So I learned what I had been reading about my whole life, as far as the inner city and how hard the struggle is. Because see, Washington, D.C. is no longer Chocolate City now. It's no longer Chocolate City. Back when I was living in Washington, it was Chocolate City. And so you got a chance to really live the inner city life and understand the struggle. Understand the struggle that some of our people had through no fault of theirs, but because of the system that they had to go through. And I lived it, I saw it, and I recruited guys that I had to take. I recruited guys, man, who we some kind of way got into Howard that had trouble reading and writing. And this is guys that had come from inner city high schools in Washington. So my point is, I learned that stuff was real.
For sure.
And that anything you could do to give back and help them guys. And that's what that was my goal, is to give them anything I could do to help them understand that there's some opportunities out here if you're willing to try to take care of them. So that's what I learned in Washington. Now you go at 33 to become a head coach at age 33, which is extremely young for a Division I head coach. I took a program at South Carolina State that hadn't had a winning season in 9 years. And now you're talking about, as you well know, Orangeburg is the direct polar opposite of Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir.
Small town, a small community, very much a community that is kind of set in its own ways. South Carolina State was the preeminent. Everything kind of focused around South Carolina State, and if you worked there, you got a chance to do certain things because you were part of the South Carolina State community. So now I get down there, a team that hadn't had a winning season. It was quote unquote a football school. Right. A lot of high major guys coming out of South Carolina State, the Donnie Shells, the Harry Carsons, the Dwayne Harpers, big time football players coming out of there. guys that I got to know through my being a coach there. But in 2 years, in my second year, we go to the NCAA tournament, 1988, 89.
Wow.
We have, we go like 25-5, 25-6. I forget now what the record was. But in my second year, we turned South Carolina State into now a preeminent basketball school. And I stayed there 16 years. Wow. And of those 16 years, and this is the thing, Jermel, that I'm most proud of my time at South Carolina State. 13 out of the 16 years I was at South Carolina State, we either finished first or second.
That's crazy. That's
13
crazy.
out of 16 years I was at South Carolina State,
Wow.
we either finished first or second. We graduated right about 75 to 80% of our student athletes that stayed the whole time.
That's awesome.
So that was the legacy that I left at South Carolina State in 2003.
The most important message to get across to student athletes suffering from mental health issues is that you're not alone. Many student athletes deal with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental health struggles. If this is the case, speak to someone like a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, or your fellow teammate. Adults who are supporting a student athlete should be aware of the signs. A student athlete who is experiencing mental health difficulties might have constant fatigue, loss of appetite, mood swings, apathy, or even declining grades and/or social isolation. A student athlete's mental health can be severely affected by an injury. An athlete's entire life becomes about their sport. And when they lose the ability to play, it can take a huge toll mentally. As we continue to reduce the stigma around mental health, hopefully more middle and high school level student athletes will feel confident discussing their health, whether it be mental or physical. The Triple Threat podcast will be adding a psychology aspect in season 2. We will be doing our part to help destigmatize mental health when it comes to student athletes. So subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the interview.
That was the legacy that I left at South Carolina State in 2003. What I learned about Nashville, where Tennessee State was, Nashville was a progressive town with Blacks being in very prominent roles.
Interesting.
One of my closest companions in Nashville was the vice mayor of the city, a guy named Howard Gentry, who's the Gentry Center where that we played in was named after his father. And so he was a frat brother of mine. And so Blacks were doing real well in Nashville. And so got a chance to kind of be back in a big city after 16 years. And again, I enjoyed my time in Orangeburg, but it was just probably time to try something else.
For sure.
And I took the biggest challenge athletically that I ever had to take. When I took the job at Tennessee State in 2003, we were coming off a championship at South Carolina State. And by the way, they haven't been to one since I left in 2003. Tennessee State won 2 games. They were 2-25 when I took the team over. So I was, one of my mentors was John Thompson, the late big John Thompson at Georgetown. And Coach Thompson said to me, he said, "Look, man, I think you should take the job." he could say you could double your wins if you just win 4 games, you know. So I took the job at Tennessee State, and let me just say this: we went in 4 years at Tennessee State. We went from 4 wins to I think 16, and got to the championship game of the OVC, and we lost to Austin Peay.
Wow.
Signed a 2-year contract extension, and the president. And see, I was living in a false world, and Mike Krzyzewski told me this, and I didn't really internalize it. While I was at South Carolina State, listen to this. I worked for 8 athletic directors and 5 presidents. 8 athletic directors and 5 presidents in 16 years.
Wow. And
Coach K told me one time, he said, man, that's an abnormality. That ain't normal. Usually between them 8 athletic directors and them 5 presidents, one of them gonna try to fire you. But I didn't realize, and that he was telling the truth. We were so good at South Carolina State that nobody could come in and do that. When you talk about 13 out of 16 years, you was first and second. Well, I get to Tennessee State, and in 4 years we go from 4 wins to 16 and losing the championship game. But the very next year, a new president comes in. I still tell the story now that if the guy that hired me, the late Dr. James Hefner, he's now deceased, if he was still the president at Tennessee State, I'd probably still be the coach at Tennessee State, because I was his guy. He handpicked me to come and turn this pro, but he got sick and had to retire. New president came in. I get to the championship game his first year. The second year we lost some players and we regressed, and he fired me.
Right.
And that was the first time in my life I ever been fired.
Wow.
But I still had 2 years left on my contract, because I had just signed a new contract. So long story short, you may have read about it, may have heard about it. I sued the school for the money that they owed me. I said, hey, y'all can do whatever y'all want, but y'all don't give me my money. Right. You know, I ain't just gonna walk away. So I ended up winning the case and getting my whole salary, so forth and so on. And but I learned more about politics, the political aspect of things in Nashville, because of what went down. And again, the new president came in. I had a down year, and he wanted his own guy in.
For sure.
And he fired me. So I learned that. And then when I came to A&T, the Greens, it was almost like coming home, because I grew up in Winston-Salem. My mother was now in her 90s. And so I get the job in Winston-Salem, which is in Greensboro, which is 20 minutes from Winston-Salem. The guy that was the chancellor that hired me grew up in Winston-Salem, Chancellor Harold Martin. And in my opinion, Jermel, he is one of the top chancellors of all universities. And in my opinion, he's one of the top chancellors in the HBCU world. A&T is light years ahead of a lot of institutions in a lot of ways. You got 15,000 students, and it's all a reflection of Chancellor Martin's vision. Wow. So he hires me, and I come in, and what I learned at A&T was that if you have vision, you can do a lot of things. And A&T, as you see, they're going on, they left the MEAC and they went to the Big South, and now they're in the CAA, and all that is a direct result of Chancellor Martin. They got a student center, Jermel, at A&T, that's a block long.
What?
A block, a student center. Wow. Anything that any student center, you give me the best, Stanford, Duke, whatever, anything that a student center could have in it, the student center at A&T has it. It can compare to any student center in the world. Wow. It's a block. The whole block is taken up by the students. That's the kind of vision that Chancellor Martin has. So I get to A&T, And I learned about vision from him, and learned that to be able to, you can do anything if you have vision and you have the drive to go get. So in my first year at A&T in 2012-13, my mother gets sick. She's living in Winston-Salem. My wife gets sick. She's living in Nashville. And I get sick. And nobody really knows I'm sick, but they know about my mother. I get prostate cancer.
Wow.
So my very first year, A&T hadn't had a championship team in 18 years. 2012-13, we win the MEAC in my very first year. Go to the dance, we beat Liberty in the final of the first 4 games. Beat Liberty and go to the next round, the second round, and our opponent is Louisville. That's the year they won the national championship. Well, I'm sitting in my room at 7:30 in the morning in Dayton, having just won that Tuesday night before. I get a call at 7:30 in the morning, and I don't normally answer my phone if I don't know the number,
Right.
but because it was the NCAA tour, I figured it was a reporter, somebody calling, so I answered it. And the guy on the other end goes, "Stop." And I said, "Good morning." He said, "This Jesse." It's 7:30 in the morning. He said, "This Jesse." And I'm saying, "Jesse, I don't know who Jesse." I'm being respectful, but I'm saying, right. Jesse. He said, "Yeah, Jesse Jackson." And I'm so, Reverend Jackson. He said, "Yeah, man, I'm so proud of you." Blah blah blah. He said, "What time are you guys gonna get to Lexington? Because that's where we're playing Louisville." And I said, "Well, we got team breakfast at 10. We leave in the board the bus at 11:30. We should be in Lexington around 2. He said, "I'll be at the hotel when you get there." When we got to Lexington, Jesse Jackson was in the lobby, came on the bus, and Jesse spent the whole time, Reverend Jackson spent the whole time with us, because he's a graduate of North Carolina A&T.
Wow.
And he and I became just like that over a 4-day period. Wow. And he still, when he comes to Greensboro, we go to dinner. His health is failing him a little bit now, but that's a story. So the next year we win, and I chronicle all this in my book. But the next year, after we win my very first year at A&T, June of 2014, my mother dies. September, which is 3 months later of 2014, my wife died. So now I'm dealing with the 2 most important women in my life having died. I'm fighting prostate cancer, and nobody knows that. Well, they know about the death, but they don't know that I'm sick too. And I'm trying to make it all work. And after a year of trying to do that, Chancellor Martin, who I told about, and the AD said, "Look, man, this is what we want to do." He said, you brought us, took us to the NCAA tournament, got us a lot of exposure, made us a lot of money. We want to offer you an opportunity to stay at your coach's salary, and we're going to create a position for you called Director of Donor Engagement.
Wow.
Basically, where I would go out and meet with donors. He said, "You got a great personality. Everybody loves you. You go out and sell the university. And then you can do your broadcast and so forth." So, and what I learned, A&T did the right way in a big time manner. They honored my contract over the next 4 years by creating a position for me to go out and meet with heavyweight folks that loved A&T, that want to give back. And I was able to, that's how I got my broadcast career started. So I would broadcast games for the MEAC, I would broadcast games for A&T. I wrote my book during that time. So that's kind of a synopsis of what I learned at 4 universities. Howard, I learned about the inner city living and how a major big city operates. I learned at South Carolina State how in a small town, a university can be the focal point and can make a lot of things happen. At Nashville, I learned the politics of real life and how things work. And then at A&T, I learned about vision, being a visionary. That if you have vision and you can dream it, and then you work hard at it, you can make it all happen.
That's awesome, Coach. And I know some years you went from head coach to assistant coach. And what we like to talk about, talking to the assistant coaches, because as a head coach, of course, you want to, bring on people that have a great vision, but you never supposed to outshine the master per se. So what do you tell assistant coaches their jobs and approaches should be to head coaches? Because head coaches want some information how to make things better. And if it don't get approved or, used, I think some assistant coaches might feel a little intimidated by that. So what's their expectations from assistant coaches when it comes to head coaches?
Well, this is a true story, Jermel. I was an assistant coach at Howard for 11 years. Now, as you well know, you have on coaching staffs probably on even mid-major to low-major programs and high majors, you may have 10 or 11 people on the staff. Mid-major programs now, you got at least 5. Mm-hmm. When you talk about 3 full-time assistants, grad assistants, the director of basketball, player development. For 11 years at Howard University, Jermel, we had 2 coaches.
Wow.
Head coach and Cyrus Alexander. Mm. And I've learned every aspect of the game as it relates to coaching, as it relates to administrative work, the stuff that director of basketball, scheduling, traveling, over academics, every aspect of it. I learned it, and I appreciate Coach Williamson giving me that opportunity to be involved with every aspect of it. And it was hard work. Right. I mean, it was hard. And I remember Ben saying in his interview with you that one of the things I did for him was I gave him the same, even though we had more coaches, it was just 2 of us at Howard. It was 4 of us at South Carolina State. But I wanted Ben to be able to say that I gave him the opportunity as my lead guy to know how to run a basketball program. Right. By having the total responsibility of all aspects of the program. So I would tell 2 things I would tell a guy aspiring to get into college as an assistant and to try to move forward as a head coach. 1, if you're an assistant, you better have some players. I mean, that's just straight up. You better have connections to be able to help a head coach get some people that can play like Jermel President. That's 1. 2, nothing supersedes hard work.
For sure.
See, a lot of these guys think it's a glamour job. A lot of these guys think, when I was on the road, I watched assistant coaches, on the road in the gym, man, they, dapping it up and this and that, and the game's going on. It's no way you can be paying attention to the game and you got all these conversations going and the next job, and then do the job that you have. Do learn and be focused. I like to watch those assistant coaches that are sitting over off in the corner taking notes. So they are really honed in on whoever they're recruiting. So that's my advice to and the third thing is that your pitch is so vitally important. If people, and coaches just like anybody, they talk.
Right.
They talk.
Right.
And somebody will say, man, that Jermel President is a hard worker.
Right.
And somebody will say it to A, and then somebody will say it to C. And sooner or later, you get to D, and D might be Mike Krzyzewski or Roy Williams. And they and so they process that and put it in the back. Or they say, Jermel President, man, he's a clown. He's just out here talking. And so my point is, you got the image that you project,
Mm.
and especially as a young African-American male,
Mm.
you want to project an image that your coach can be proud of. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of Jermel Brown,
Mm.
who played for me, your homeboy out of Charleston,
Yep. Yep.
came, and I got a lot of flack. True
Mm.
story. When Ben left to come to the College of Charleston, JB had just gotten out of school. We had been on a championship team, gone to the NCAA tournament. He was a part of our 95, 96 team with Moo Blakeney and Derek Patterson and Eric Fernandez. That was a pretty daggone good team.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost to Kansas that year. But I used to watch, all my players would always work my camps. There'd be a way for me to give them some money legally through the camp. And I used to always watch Jermel interact with the little kids. Like the high school coaches always coach the big kids.
Right.
So I let the players coach the middle school and elementary school kids. And I used to watch JB just stand off on the side and watch how hard he worked, how he interacted with those middle school kids and made them do this and do that. So when Ben got the job at College of Charleston, I had a whole lot of people came to me wanting to get on the staff, the guys with college experience and this, that, and the other. So I called JB and said, hey, man, I don't know if you're interested in getting it, because he was working in the business world, I think. Had been out of school 1 year. And I said, I don't know if you got any interest in doing this. And the job not paying a heck of a lot of money, but it's a start. And God willing, we can continue to recruit players, this, that, and the other, and keep this thing going. And I said, but I'd like to offer you the opportunity to maybe join our coaching staff. And I got a lot of flack for hiring JB at the time from people who said, man, how you gonna go with a guy that didn't have any experience? I said, well, this guy played for me. I've known him since he was 17, 18 years old. We won a championship together as a player, and I've watched him. He's now working in the business world. He's got a degree, and I watch how he carries himself. You know, he carries himself like a professional. And so consequently, I hired him. And I've never regretted that one moment. He has gone on to have an outstanding career as a college basketball coach, carries himself like a head coach, articulate, image conscious, great family, the whole nine. And we went through something very similar. His first wife died of breast cancer. My only wife died of colon cancer. So we got a bond right there. So I said all that to say that when you're an assistant, you got to work hard. You got to be disciplined. You got to have connections to players, and you got to present yourself in a positive image. And so therefore, and the last thing that I would tell an assistant is make sure everything you do, your head coach can trust you. It's about trust, man. That in any relationship, whether it be a marriage, whether it be a girlfriend, boyfriend, whether it be coaching young men or your staff, I got to trust you, and you got to trust me. And I'm a straight shooter, and I'm gonna tell you what I can do, and if you can deal with it, fine. If you can't, fine. But I ain't gonna BS you. I ain't not gonna throw you no curveball. And I think that's what my players respected about me. They didn't always like it, but they come back now and tell me, Coach, I get it. I get it, that I understood. Because see, I can be like I used to, Jermel, I tell guys at our very first team meeting, and I try to just mess with them, but I wasn't really messing with them. I'd say, first thing I'd say to them, I said, let me tell you guys something. I speak 2 languages fluently, English and profanity. Now, whichever one you want, whichever one I'm gonna give you based on your actions. So let's get that out front. You know, I'm gonna treat you how you needed to be treated. If
Right.
you need to be treated like a little kid, then that's how I'm gonna treat you. If you
For
need
sure.
to be treated like a man, then that's how I'm gonna treat you. So they knew up front where I was coming from. And then I said, hey guys, I'm gonna give you my trust and I'm gonna give you my respect, and then I want the same thing in return. So communicating is, to me, has been the cornerstone of my career.
In this timeout message, we got Michael Bowman.
If you want to get rid of the dog, I'm glad to say that you have to get rid of the dog, so I'm the bad guy. But it's one of those things where some people have problems, others don't. Sometimes every year there's a huge asthma flare when school starts, and some people feel that it's when kids wind up rolling around on old gym mats. And also, many of the schools around here have lived through hurricanes and have a lot of dust and mold and that sort of thing. And so there are programs nationally to try to help people in schools have asthma-friendly schools.
Now let's get back to the interview. And so, Coach, right now, you're talking about all the areas you've been in, the DC areas, Orangeburg areas. There was kind of tough areas in community. And, even in our culture, and just I think it's across all cultures, a dad's going to tell a kid, hey, stick through it. Work hard, keep your head down, just don't worry about the pain, whatever, just fight through it. But now we move into a generation where they kind of coupled that with mental health. So my question I'm asking is, how do you feel about this new terminology, mental health, taking the seat of athletes not knowing how to deal with adversity or their toughness or how to deal with that? Do you think social media plays a big play into all that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I do, Jermel. I think, first of all, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you don't understand how to do something, or you don't feel comfortable, or you got anxiety about certain things. I tell my grandkids all the time that, feel free to come to me, feel free to come to your parents or whatever, and let me know what you think, what's going on with you. And if I don't profess to know a lot, but what I do know is that I know how to pick up the phone and call somebody that's supposed to be an expert in what you having issues with.
For sure.
That's one. So being able to feel confident enough to talk about whatever's going on. And we don't, and it seems to me that these young people nowadays, because of social media, have so many things going on in their life that this thing right here, this thing could be a positive and it could be a negative, because it controls it. You see these kids, man, it's like an appendage to their hand. They can't let it go. And my grandson, he's a great student in the 7th grade. Is a track person and is a swimmer, but he is man locked into these video games. I mean, they play him. It's like it's amazing. Right. And I worry about the time that young people, instead of being like me, I'm outside playing, because that's what we do, playing in the backyard, playing whatever, football by myself in the backyard. Or I'm sure you played it, in the AAU, in the playground, this, that, because you couldn't have honed your skills without, I have to make sure that he understands, man, you want to be good. You say you want to run track. You say you want to be and he's decent. He's not great.
Right.
But if he worked a little harder at it, he could be maybe a potential scholarship athlete because he's a good student.
Right.
But His Saturdays from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night is on playing Fortnite or something to that effect.
Right.
So my point is, social media is good, but it's also, I tell you, John Wooden, the great legendary coach at UCLA, said something. Everything needs to be done in moderation. Anything that's too much of anything ain't good for you. Do things in moderation. You know, don't let something control you. Control what you can control. And I wonder about today's generation. They are being controlled by social media. Kids are committing suicide.
Yeah.
Because of social media, what's being said about them on social media. People that they don't even know. I mean, it's like, I asked my grandson, and I'm using him as an example,
Right.
about these people that you're playing these games with. They live in California somewhere. I mean, he don't even know these people.
Right.
You know, and I get it, because everybody, I mean, I talk to other parents, other grandparents, their kids do the same. So my point is, it's almost like, Jermel, this NIL, name, image, and likeness.
Right.
This portal with the transfer system. We are at a stage right now that some of these things are almost out of control.
I agree.
Social media is almost out of control. The transfer portal is almost out of control.
I agree.
Name, image, and likeness is heading that way.
Right.
And so my point is, we as the people who are in charge, who are much smarter than me, gotta figure out how to get a handle on this stuff. I mean, because they created this monster,
Right.
and now the genie's out of the bottle.
It is.
And unless we work very hard to bring it back, and I'm all for college athletes getting their fair share financially, because you know, schools and coaches and have profited for real on what you guys have done as college student athletes. Social media in its own world is good, but at the same time, when kids are committing suicide over stuff that is said on social media, that's dangerous, man. And again, I don't know what the answers are. Only thing I know that I try to do, and I don't try to be invasive with my grandkids, is talk to them about what's going on in their life and on a regular basis. And you know, they're gonna open up some, but they're not gonna tell you everything. That's just the nature of growing up. You know, man, you know, that's just the way. So, but you gotta try to find that balance as a parent, as a grandparent, as a leader, as somebody, as a mentor, somebody that they honestly feel they can trust. And it goes back, I said that's about 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
Trust in any form or fashion is the key to any successful partnership, relationship, team, so forth and so on. We all got to know that we can trust each other, and it may cause your network to be a little smaller than you want it to be. You can't rock with everybody, you know, because you can't trust everybody. And I've learned that the hard way in some instances. You know, trusting business people that I thought had my best interest at heart, when really they wanted to use me because they thought they could get X, Y, and Z. And so the mental health issue, man, is real. And I think that we've got to just kind of try to communicate honestly and openly with young people on a daily basis about what's and we can't be overly critical all the time.
I agree.
We got to listen to them because in what they're telling you is real to them.
To them, correct.
It's real to them. It's not. You may think, man, God, come on, but it's real. And I get it. Listening to young people, listening to my grandkids, So I go back again, man, to try to have open and honest dialogue. Try to provide the necessary opportunities for them to talk to whoever it is they're talking to, their counselors. I tell my daughter, hey, make sure that I'm CC'd on every correspondence you're getting from the school. I want to know what my grandkids' teachers are saying. Jermel does this well, but he does this bad. He needs to improve. I want to know so I can address it so they can know that I know what's going on and I expect improvement, So that's kind of my take on hopefully answering your question.
Yeah, you did.
He made a name for himself as a star for the College of Charleston basketball teams in the mid to late 90s. And now Jermel President is doing what he can to make sure that the Charleston area kids have a chance to succeed on the court and in life.
So I want to, give some of that back to the community as well. After college and after playing professionally, I started the DAE Foundation just to be that wealth of knowledge to the kids in the community and parents as well.
College of Charleston Hall of Famer Jermel President said he saw a need for this while he was in school. So he founded the nonprofit DAE Foundation, and its philosophy for success is based on what he calls his oatmeal recipe.
Let's go and finish together.
Basically teaches the game of basketball, focusing on skills development, nutrition, and education. Not only SAT, ACT type stuff, but education for parents in how to navigate through the different levels of athletics.
In closing, Coach, we got something called oatmeal recipe, which I created. And those ingredients is nutrition, skill development, and education. And those three ingredients can not just be for student athletes. It could be for any type of career, any craft that you're involved in. So I want to get your take on those three ingredients and how do you apply it or did apply it to your life and coaching career. Let's start with skill development.
Skill development is making sure you understand how hard you're gonna have to work. See, because nothing, Jermel, supersedes hard work.
For sure.
One, you got to understand who you are,
right?
What you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a good musician, if you're a good actor, if you're good whatever, good electrician, and you got to have a passion for it. You got to have a passion. I think that's how you develop your skills. You got to have a passion for something, and then you got to work extremely hard at it. My passion was coaching. I love and still do to break down film. Nobody's going. I don't care if it's. I don't give a damn who it is.
Right.
I'm gonna know as much about College of Charleston as anybody.
For sure.
Now, we may not be good enough to beat College of Charleston, but it's not gonna be because I didn't study how hard and how well you all executed what you all executed. And nobody was any better than the College of Charleston that I coached against. I mean, Coach Kress was as good at it as anybody ever coached against. That's a compliment to him, you, and the whole program.
For sure.
So my point for skill development is you got to work hard. You got to, first of all, know what it is that you want to be good at. Whatever that is, you got to know what that is. Because you can't be good at everything.
Right.
You can be good at something. And whatever that something is, then once you understand it, you got to work hard at it. You got to have a passion for it. I give you a story that one of my former players at State, young man by the name of Bruce Price. High level guard. I got him from St. John, Jarvis. Transferred to Tennessee State, was the best guard, one of the best guards in the OVC for the 3 years I coached. Got a chance to go out to California, was going to get drafted, this, that, and the other. And he was working with a personal trainer in LA. So we met, one of the meetings that I like to have, we met, and I told Bruce, I said, look, man, if your workout starts at 7:30 in the morning, you need to get there at 6. And you need to do at least 500 shots before the workout even starts. This is the advice I gave him, and this is going to blow your mind when I tell you. This is the advice I gave Bruce. And I felt like I was telling the right thing to do. Before the workout even starts, you need to get up and be up 500 shots before the workout starts. Okay. Week later goes by. I get a call from Bruce. He's in LA. I'm saying, hey, Bruce, what's up, man? How's everything going? First thing out of his mouth, Jermel, was, Coach, you didn't tell me right. I'm like, I didn't know where he was going with this. I said, I didn't tell you right what you're talking about. He said, yo, man, you told me to try to get up at least 500 shots before the workout starts. I said, yeah. He said, man, my personal trainer, the guy that works with us also, is Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe had been in the league, Jermel, 10 years. He was there before Bruce was getting up 1,500 shots. True story. Getting up 1,500 shots before the workout started. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. And he said, Coach, this dude is phenomenal, man. He's a 10-time All-NBA player, and he's there before Bruce, who's trying to be a rookie, trying to make it. And I said, Bruce, I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. I learned a valuable lesson in my 40s or 50s, whatever I was, that how hard you got to work at something. He is Kobe Bryant in the off season, getting up 1,500 shots before the workout starts at 7:30. That blew my mind. So the passion for something and the hard work, that's what I would say about skill development.
What do you say about education? Because, you know, like education is reading and writing is true, but education could be about the game. What I hate to see, you got 17 fouls on the clock and the player just shooting a 3-pointer. Why don't drive and get the free throw line? And that's education. How is that important to you? Well, as I told you, if you remember early on, and I said my attributes were I had 3 attributes as a player. 1, I played exceptionally hard. 2, I had a high battle IQ. And 3, I could shoot, just a la Jermel President, if I screwed up and didn't recruit. So my point was, I think that people need to study everything that they do to be prepared. One of my attributes, and I try to share this with young people, I try to share it with my daughter, I try to share it with my family, my grandkids, attention to detail. Attention to detail. I have a saying that I wrote on that I wrote on my board when I was coaching. Things work out best for those who make the best of the way things work out. Things work out best for those who make the best of the way things work out. And that simply means whatever life gives you, you've got to be strong enough mentally and physically to take it and make a positive out of it. And that's being intellectual, it's being having discipline, being able to take the situation, because we all gonna be in a situation where it didn't work out the way we had anticipated it to work out. But take it, things work out best for those who make the best of the way things work out. I like that. And I live by that. And that's my education. That's life education. That is a life. And then when I got that quote from President Obama, and it's simple. He said, man,
hard things are hard. He said, I'm the president of the United States, and if I get something to come across my desk, that means it's hard because everybody else couldn't figure it out. So those would be my things about education, man, is that there's no easy way to get something done, and you got to keep. I get up every day and I ask the good Lord to help me to grind today, help me to keep grinding, and at the end of the day, I have a checklist. If I had 6 things I needed to do, hopefully I did 3 of them. You know, if the day that I did all 6 of them, that's a heck of a day. Like today, one of my checklists: be ready to be on triple threat at 12 o'clock. I've been sitting right in front because I ain't no highly technical person. So I was sitting at this computer at 11:15, making sure everything Zoom stuff was ready to go. See, because I wasn't gonna wait till 12 o'clock and something didn't go right. So that's who I am.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
I'm making sure my attention to detail is on top of things.
All right. Lastly, Coach, nutrition. What I hate to see most is at a tournament, an AAU program, and kids walking around with Skittles and sodas, right? How is that coach or organization being a leader of telling these kids about the importance of their body? So what's your take on that?
I tell you what I learned. One of my good friends, the late, great Moses Malone. Moses and I became very close. I don't know if you know, but I coached his son at South Carolina State, Little Mo. And Little Mo, Moses and I I was very blessed to have a Nike shoe contract all the years that I coached. And I was one of the few HBCU coaches that ever had a Nike shoe contract, and would go on these exclusive vacations every year. Coach Chris would be on it. My man that was at Wichita State, what's his name?
Greg Marshall.
Yeah, Greg Marshall. So we were all on the trips together. But on the trips, I got very close to Moses because anybody that was under Nike contract was invited to come on the trip. So Moses and I became we were golfing partners. And the one thing that I learned from Moses, because he's preached it and he lived it, your body is your temple. And what you put in your body is what is going to come out. And Moses Malone was a very nutritious, conscious person before it became the end thing. Like, now we are learning about it as African Americans. My parents, you know, we ate everything. You know what I'm saying? And but nothing against them. I'm just talking. That's how we were, you know. But my point is, in the new millennium, the health conscious is. I'm glad you're focusing on this with young people, because it's the right thing to do. But Moses used to always talk about your body is your temple, and what you put in your body is what you're gonna get. And see, the reason Moses had some heart issues, but once he finished playing, he worked out religiously every day, like he was still playing. But what he didn't do was sometimes he wouldn't take his medicine like he should have. So, you know, in talking to Little Mo, they tried to get him not to work out as hard because he wasn't playing anymore, but he still, you know, instead of being on the treadmill for an hour, they would just be on there for 30 minutes or something. And I'm just using that as an example. But that wasn't who Moses was. He was a health fanatic, but in the end, he overdid it. You know, and his heart couldn't take it. So my point I'm making is that make sure, and one of the things that I'm very conscious of now is working out and exercising and eating right.
For sure.
I try to eat a salad of some type every day, maybe 2, to make sure that I eat fruit. I eat a lot of fruit, and I try to make sure that, again, I'm not as conscious as I should be,
For sure.
but I am. I do exercise, I do work out, and I try to make sure that I'm eating the proper things because I haven't had a bout with cancer. I understand what you put in your body can help control those cancer cells that are probably still floating around, tiny, still floating around somewhere in your body.
Right.
I eat a lot of salmon. I was on I forget the name of the diet at some point. The doctors put me on it. It was some type of foreign diet, but you eat a lot of salmon, a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit. And I try to hold to that. You know, I like a good steak every now and then, but the main thing is, I asked the doctor, he said, Coach, you can pretty much do, and it goes back to what Coach Wooden said, do things in moderation. Don't overdo things. You know how you can sometimes go out to dinner, and when you leave, that stuff feeling, you know, you've been there, done that. In fact, I'm going to a hibachi restaurant at 5 o'clock. I can't overdo it, man. They got good vegetables and everything. But once I feel like I've reached my limit, then give me a to-go box. You know, that'll be my lunch tomorrow. But my point is, do things. It's like people that like to partake of alcohol or whatever. You know, don't overdo it.
Right.
You know, don't overdo it. I knew a guy who get up and go to work every day. Didn't drink, go to work 9 to 5, provided for his family. But come 5 o'clock on Friday, from 5 o'clock to Sunday, man, he was hitting that sauce, man, like, boom, boom, and it eventually killed him, you know? So my point is, do things in moderation, and that's what I would say about nutrition. Make sure you're conscious of what you're putting in your body, and the thing that young people have that we probably didn't have, or I probably didn't have growing up, you may have, is the availability of research. Read. You know, nothing supersedes reading and learning, because I'm constantly learning every day. I read about your foundation. I listened, and I try to take in. I was blessed, man. I was on the NABC board. That's the board that runs college basketball. I'm in the room with, you know, all the, you know, the Krzyzewskis and the Roy Williams and the Bill Selfs and all these kind of folks, you know, for 10 years on the board. And I didn't say a lot in those meetings, but I listened. I listened, and I could share what I hear the heavyweights saying, and I could take it and kind of shape it as to how this applies to Cy Alexander and his program and his life and his this and his that. So that's kind of like my take on that.
For sure. Well, Coach, man, again, I appreciate you. It was finally good to talk to you. I heard a lot of stories about you, you know, through players or friends, all that. So trust me, I wish I had played for you, just because being that player coach, I would have loved to experience that. And I wanted to go to HBCU too, but it still worked out for both of us in both situations. So again, I appreciate you coming on today.
God bless you, Jermel. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. And if I can help any kind of way, I'm a phone call away, man. Okay.
Yes, sir.
My man.
Well, you have a good meal tonight and take care.
I got to push it away when I get stuff, brother.
Yes, sir.
Take care, man.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.
You too. Bye-bye. So there it goes, guys. Another one in the books. I want to thank Coach Cy Alexander for coming on and giving us his wealth of knowledge on his career and just different tidbits that we can pick up to better ourselves as athletes, coaches, and people. So really appreciate him coming on and giving us his time. Don't forget to subscribe to the Triple Threat Podcast on your favorite listening platform. We are live on Apple, Google, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. That's Triple Threat spelled 3 R-I-P-L-E 3 H-R-E-A-T. Triple Threat Podcast. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the DAE Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jermel President, and on Twitter at President Jermel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.